Craig, and we have been looking at Athlon Magazine, and each school, each program, has an opposing Big 12 coach commenting on them. Oklahoma State, probably the most confusing team in the entire league. They can beat the crap out of you or beat themselves the same way. It really just depends on the week. For having a veteran coach, they struggle to stay consistent. They have an offensive system that works for them, and it's very good. After Texas and OU leave, they could have been the top roster, and they could have been the top roster in the league, but right now they're a good bit behind TCU and Kansas State. Alan Bowman, their quarterback, could work out in Mike Gundy's system. He obviously knows the league. The defensive coordinator hire in Brian Nardo is intriguing. It's like what he did a few years back, bringing Mike Yurcich in from a small school. I'd worry less about the small school hire and more about rebuilding from scratch using the portal. Former defensive coordinator Jim Knowles leaving really hurt them, but so did the turnover. They've had a lot of developmental guys peak at the right time in 2021 and didn't really have the depth underneath. That's from an opposing Big 12 coach on Oklahoma State.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much, I think, what most people feel like. They don't really know what to think about Oklahoma State, is what I'm gathering. Same thing with Baylor. Very similar in that way. I think outside of the fact that Gundy obviously has a massive head start on Aranda and Big 12 experience. But, yeah, beyond that, I mean, Alan Bowman, we've seen him in this league before. We saw him in Texas, in Lubbock for Texas Tech, and he was depends on the game, right? Like, I mean, sometimes he's pretty good, and I certainly think in that offense he's got a chance with Gundy and crew to be pretty good. But, yeah, there are a lot of questions and just a lot of unknown about what to expect from them. And I do think that if you're looking at the future of the Big 12, then you know what? They're right there in the group of everybody else in the league as far as who can be on top. Yep. Like, as far as that question goes, you know, there is no 1, 2, 3. There's like, name a team. They could be the team that's on top, and Oklahoma State has the potential to do that. Now, obviously, they're having to overcome some things in men's basketball. But on the football side, yeah, 2 years ago they were in the Big 12 championship. 2 years ago they were on the verge of the college football playoff. And then I don't know what the hell happened last year. Like, you know, Spencer Sanders got dinged up, obviously, but, you know, for the exodus of transfers that they had, including Spencer Sanders, it was all just very odd. But, yeah, Gundy's a great coach, and if they were to jump up and win, you know, 9 games this year, I don't think anybody could say maybe you wouldn't say you saw it coming, but you wouldn't say that you were surprised, right? I mean, like, that's kind of how I feel about them. Of like, yeah, anything's possible.
You say that again about last year? You weren't surprised?
No, I'm saying this year.
Oh, this year.
If they won 9 games, I say I wouldn't expecting it, but I wouldn't be surprised either because he's good at what he does, and you know they've been a solid program. But yeah, it's been a little bit of a seesaw, you know, these last couple of years, and that, you know, with all these new faces and changes, it's just like, okay, outside of Gundy, what do you expect? And right now, I don't know, and I don't think a lot of people know what to expect.
Wet Blanket, thanks for this note. I did not think this way, but there have been, you know, with Oklahoma dipping last year, and Texas has been kind of right above treading water. No Big 12 school has won more football games than Oklahoma State the last 3 years. Now, that's not 8, 10, 12 years, but they would be in that conversation around with Oklahoma, too, because of their consistency. And that's what made last year so surprising. When they won that game in Waco, when they came into Waco in the rematch, or the third time to meet Baylor in 2 years, they came in and they looked like, okay, they're fine. They beat Baylor up a little bit. It was a close game, but they were the better team pretty much the entire game. And then the wheels fell off. And yes, there were injuries. There was attrition. Everybody deals with that. But Barry Crawford, Oklahoma State has been to 17 bowl games in a row. That's why, if they are good, it would not surprise, I think, Craig, I'm speaking for you, but for me, because of that statistic. They always find a way. There have been years where they've been better than you thought, and there's been years when you're like last year, what the hell happened? But that is an amazing stat that probably not most people around the country would realize.
Yeah, that's an incredible run. You know, when he was a young pup, I don't know, people would have predicted that, you know, 20 years later, Gundy would still be doing his thing in Stillwater and, you know, getting them to the various points of where they are, where they've knocked on the big door a couple of times now, including a couple of years ago. But, yeah, they've been remarkably consistent. They'll make a bowl game this year. Just as far as where in the pecking order they sit, I don't know. But who knows about the Big 12 this year? Not a soul.
I don't.
Not a soul knows about the Big 12 this year. I mean, everybody's got their rankings, everybody's got their opinions and all that, and that's great, and that's what we do. But I mean, I don't think anybody could say with 100% certainty of this is exactly how it's going to go. And I mean, for one, it's sports, it's college football too, so it's even crazier than probably other sports from time to time. But I just think this league across the board is so even or just riddled with question marks that you could name 6 teams to win the Big 12 and make an argument. You can make an argument. TCU could run it back. You can, as far as getting to the Big 12 championship game and maybe even winning it. K-State, they don't feel like they're not going to be right there in the mix. Texas doesn't feel like they're not going to be in the mix. Oklahoma doesn't think they're not going to be in the mix. Oklahoma State fans still feel like they clearly should be in the mix. I know Baylor fans are a little bit on the ledge. For one, they're a little bit more of a nervous Nelly sometimes than others. But also, I think, there's obviously a lot of questions going from 12 wins in the greatest year in school history to losing to Air Force at TCU Stadium in a blizzard. So, the way that ended put such a sour taste in people's mouths that I think that really weighs them down a bit more than maybe the others as far as the confidence level of being able to leap back up. But, yeah, I think there's a handful of Texas Tech obviously feels like they could go probably win the conference this year, right? So, yeah, well, I think half the league feels like they're capable of doing it.
And that's why in my hand, and I'm not showing you because I picked the 1 through 14, and I'm telling you right now, it was like throwing darts. I was.
Hell, KU feels like they could go on a run. They feel like they might have the best player in the league or the offensive player of the year at least. So, I mean, even they are right there. I think the only teams you go they're probably not going to win it are the new teams. And, West Virginia, right? And maybe 1 or 2 others. Maybe you say Baylor in that. I don't know, but the last time they jumped up and won one, it wasn't expected.
They weren't expected to win it in 19 or 21.
No. So, I mean, they've shown that they can not have very high expectations and then just go on a run.
I think the only time Baylor won a Big 12 title, they've won 3 in the last, since 2013. 13 was somewhat surprising. You could see the build. 14, and of course, they had the great game with TCU. They were, I don't even know if they were favored that year, but that was not a surprise because you could see those two getting ready to just kill each other on the football field.
You talk about what ifs in college football, and I know 95% of the country probably wouldn't have given a damn, but I don't know. I think you could have swayed some of those people. You put TCU and Baylor that year in a Big 12 title game after the 61-58, and you put a playoff spot on the line because that would have been the Ohio State spot. Granted, Ohio State, with what they did afterwards, they made that argument just kind of irrelevant to everybody but TCU and Baylor folks, quite frankly. But, I mean, can you imagine what that game would have been like back then? Patterson and Briles, a rematch after the way 61-58 went. That would have been insane. Oh, man, that would have been awesome to watch. That's one I definitely feel like we missed out on. It wouldn't have been possible because they didn't have a championship game, but if you could just go back and, tweak some – let's just – make a championship game in 2014, or was that 14?
It was 14. It would have been a lot healthier for Bob Bowlesby. It would have been a lot healthier for TCU and Baylor fans because if Baylor wins, that means they won twice. If TCU wins, and of course they had the huge lead and just blew it, you would have an answer. That's what the conference championship would be all about. All right, give me one more team that you want to hear from. I've given Baylor, TCU, Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, and Kansas State. These are among the 8 returning